All right, lots of stuff to go over. We will get to alligator wrestling because that was a crazy, well, that was just a crazy adventure. But first, a few other things. One, the tattoos worked out pretty good. That one and this one, they're starting to fade now, and that one's, the Deathly Hallows is quite faded. The Dark Mark is still doing pretty decent. And none of the kids freaked out on Halloween or anything like that. I try to just go like inconspicuous and just hand them candy where they would see it, but no one no one said anything. So some people have noticed it, like on my travels to Colorado and back over the last couple of days, and I think in general people liked them. Although I was going out of the door of somewhere. It might have been like a grocery store somewhere in Colorado, maybe. And I was holding the door open with my arm out like this so that the tattoo's facing back for a woman, not a middle-aged woman, something like that. I wasn't really paying attention. I was trying to leave with my groceries. And she said thank you, and she started coming forward, and I turned my arm like that to hold the door open for just a second longer, and she like stopped and moved back. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, and then the timing wasn't right because I wasn't planning on her moving backwards or stopping, so I let go of the door, and then she had to hold it herself. So it was kind of funny. I put a new mailbox in across the street there because our mailbox is all messed up. I got hit 3 times last winter, and I haven't fixed it since. Dig it over there. That is pure clay. I dug a few feet down, probably just a little over 2 feet down. It's up on a 2x4. Not the greatest attachment job on the top, but got it on there with a jigsaw and some screws and some glue. And then I wedged in a broken half cement block. So the 4x4 went right through it perfectly. And then the other broken pieces wedged around it along with one log. And then I dumped like 120 or 140 pounds of cement in there. So hopefully that mailbox holds up this year. Let's see. I've been honing my argument skills online for certain things, just discussions and different debates, different tactics, which is very interesting. So, I try to challenge my own ideas. And so I've gone online and I asked people, what do you think if I said this, how would people counter that? And no one really seems to understand the idea or the concept of trying to find things that would counter your own point. They're like, well, I'm just arguing for my side. And it's like, well, why don't you learn something about whatever side you're not on, because you don't even know if you're on the side you would actually believe if you knew everything. So I found those unusual, very interesting. We had 25 or 27 kids for Halloween. I forgot to count a couple of times and then had to estimate a little bit, but right about 25, 27 gave up full-size candy bars. I ate a ton of chocolate. I tried to resist. I resisted for hours because my health drops pretty quick when my diet varies, and I just couldn't do it. I think it's been a little while now. I think I ate 8 full-size candy bars Halloween night, and then 4 Kit Kats the next morning. Like ridiculous amounts, and did feel it, but not as bad as I used to. So it's definite that my digestive system is slowly healing and improving. It's just taking a long time. Went to the Camburns' birthday parties. Rich is turning 50, and then Sal, Ariel's son, is turning 1. And they're like a few days apart, so they end together. And that was really cool because I saw a lot of them, I think maybe all of them, last year. And I can't believe it's already been like a year since then. It did not seem that long at all. The day before I was leaving for my Colorado trip, it was a Sunday. I'm driving to a farm where I get raw goat's milk every Sunday, and on some back roads. And a cop pulls me over and says I rolled the stop sign, which I don't think I did. And he seemed young, and he seemed new. He was a state trooper. He had to call it in. I have the ticket around here somewhere. Yeah, here's the ticket. And he had to like call it in, and then when he came back to the window, well, first of all, he asked me if I knew if I had to stop at stop signs. Yeah. And and then there's like two officers, but I think there was only the one guy in the car. There's Ellis Rogers and James Luttrell. I don't even know which one he was, because he said he like called it in, Michigan State Police Rockford for one, right? So I'm in North Muskegon, and a cop from Rockford was sitting right at this corner, just obviously waiting for someone to do something where he could give him a ticket. And I mean, that just seems weird that someone would drive over from Rockford to North Muskegon and then sit on a four-way out in the country and wait for someone. So it seems like an unusual situation. And then I think he went back to his car and called someone, because it took a while. And he came back and he said, they want me to give you a ticket. It's like, who's they? So very weird. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I probably did it, whatever. And because, you know, a guy that is carrying a gun and has the legal ability to violate the physical property of your body, meaning he can beat and shoot you legally, right? Like, acquiesce. Always acquiesce. Like, don't, right? What are you gonna? Are you gonna win the argument? I don't think it's ever happened that a car came up, or a cop came up to a car and said, you know, I'm gonna give you a ticket for something, and the person was like, no, you shouldn't. And then the cop was like, okay. So, right, just acquiesce to make it easy. And then he put in the remarks, driver stated, I probably did roll that stop, which I don't know who talks like that. I'm sure people do, but that's not my type of colloquial phrasing. So I probably did roll that stop is definitely not a direct quote, even though it's inside of quotation marks. So that's nice. And then you have to appear within 10 days. And basically everyone that I ever know that gets a ticket, you can't appear within 10 days, because they never put it in the system within 10 days, and then everyone's always in violation of the law. It's a weird, bureaucratic, corrupt mess of a system, that's for sure. And there is no one to straighten it out. But I wrote a contemporaneous note saying that I didn't roll the stop sign when I got home, and signed and dated it, and just wrote down the time, took a picture of it, and sent to myself on Facebook the timestamp. I don't know if that'll be useful at all. Anyways, that was the day before I was leaving for my trip. I haven't had a ticket in like a decade. I don't think I've been pulled over by a cop in like a decade, something like that. So, before the trip, super nervous, all right? I was going alligator wrestling in Colorado, and I was nervous about the alligator wrestling, but I was more nervous just about my overall health concerns and a lot of the traveling. It's weird, because I always used to have this strong feeling that things would work out okay. And now I don't. Like, things they might work out okay, but they might not, and eventually they probably won't, you know? So, it's completely different doing stuff like that now, and I can just feel like I'm a little more hesitant and afraid to travel, to go to new places, and I just see and I think about all the things that could go wrong, which is everything, and everything could be a huge disaster. And I don't have extra money to make up for mistakes. I don't have health where I can just, before, when I was healthy, like, if I got stuck somewhere and I had to walk like 20 miles, I could just do it. I'm not so sure I could do that anymore. So I'm just less confident in my ability to take chaos, which is why you do these types of things, right? Because you're confronting those fears and those limitations with actually dangerous things. I mean, the traveling itself isn't so actually dangerous. The wrestling alligators is. I mean, the place had jars with fingers in them. So from real people that really had their fingers bitten off by the alligators. So I was quite nervous, which was interesting. And then, surprisingly nervous. It's hard to describe how nervous I was. You'd have to use some sort of crazy metaphor, which I don't have at hand right now. And then the morning of, so I work Monday morning. I taught online for a couple hours. And then get ready and everything. I'm going to go. I'm literally go out to the car, leaving for the airport, turn the key. Wah, 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 wah. Wah, 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 wah. The thing rolls over. That's the Lincoln Town Car that I bought this spring. And I mean, I've never had an issue with it running. So that was that was great. Would not start. Luckily, it was early enough. Mom hadn't gone to work yet. She gave me a ride to the airport and dropped me off. And then I had to arrange while I was on the trip with my friend Casey to pick me up when I got back. And hopefully, I talked to the mechanic today, and I think we'll be able to get the car fixed tomorrow. But that was crazy. So, and I think there were a couple other small things that went wrong, you know, and you kind of think, man, are these signs that I'm going in the wrong direction here? But I just pushed through those. And then the trip itself was pretty interesting. I flew out of Muskegon. It was $220 round trip from Muskegon to Denver. It took 29 minutes to get to Chicago, and then I had like an hour layover or something, then a couple hours to get to Denver, and then I rented a car off Turo.com. And then I drove 4 hours south through the mountains in the dark, which was pretty interesting. It's been a while since I've driven through mountains. It was fun. I kind of like mountains. I like forest too. Part of Colorado isn't foresty enough for me. I would like forested mountains more. I like the Cascades. Those are really cool. And I like the Appalachians. Those are really cool. Those are probably my two favorite mountain ranges. I mean, I haven't been to a ton. I've been to the ones in the United States, but those are my two favorite in the United States. And obviously I climbed Mount Rainier a bunch of years ago now, and that's in the Cascades, and I rode a mountain bike over the Cascades, so I spent, you know, a decent amount of time on foot and playing around in the Cascades, and spent the one summer out there. But everything seemed to go pretty good on the way there, and then I got to the place, and I'd been communicating with the woman I was renting a room from. It was in a log cabin. There's a bunch of pictures on Facebook and whatnot, and I think I put some pictures on my website on the picture page, and there's a bunch of pictures of the alligator wrestling, and there's videos up there too on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook and all that good stuff, and Youku and Weibo and whatever else. There's a bajillion social sites now, and I post to, I don't know, like half a dozen of them or something. But it was through Airbnb that I run this place. It was $50 a night for this nice log cabin room, and it was really cool. Debbie was the house picker-upper, kind of like a live-in maid type of situation, live-in housekeeper. And Wendy was the owner. Her and her husband own it. I didn't meet him because, oddly enough, so they both spent a couple of decades as cops. Wendy said she was a cop for 27 years. And then after that, they retired. They moved from northern Colorado to southern Colorado. So from like the Denver area, I believe, to near Alamosa. And she became a school teacher down there, which is right, like 27 years as a cop, and then school teacher is an interesting transition. And then he was reading books on history and World War II and all this stuff, and she was like, you should go back to school and get your law degree. So he did. He went back to school and got his law degree, and it turns out in the little town they live in, there's no real need for a lawyer, so he opened a law practice in Colorado Springs, which is like a 3-hour drive, I think, away. So he spends every week in Colorado Springs and then comes back to the ranch on weekends, which is very interesting. But they were nice. They let me, I drove 20 miles to the store and got like 4 pounds of pork steaks and picked up some barbecue. They had a charcoal grill, which this place is at around 8,000 feet. And the charcoal doesn't burn as well at 8,000 feet because the air density is just less. It's just less dense, less oxygen per square foot. So it was harder to burn, but I got it figured out. I understand. I'm pretty good at charcoal grilling at altitude now, around 8,000 feet. So that's pretty good ways up there. And I mean, Carissa and I, when we were traveling out west, right, like a decade ago, when we got to 10,000 feet over the Rockies, she got severely sick. And when I was climbing Mount Rainier, when we got to 10,000 feet, we took a 2-hour nap. And one of the guys, it's a specific breathing pattern, I can't remember the technical name for it, but he'd do this thing where he hyperventilates, and then you don't breathe for a while, and the times keep expanding until you just die. And someone noticed, woke him up, and he had to head back down the mountain. And that was at 10,000 feet, so we were at 8,000 feet here. The other guy renting a room, and they had, technically, I guess they could rent 4 rooms. One's like a huge party family room, which is interesting. One's an outdoor log cabin, and there's 2 smaller rooms. And there was me and another guy in each of those. He is a fighter pilot in the Navy, and he's like between duties. He was stationed in one place, and then he's going to be stationed in another place, and for some reason he decided to just go camp out in Colorado for like a week. But I don't think he realized how much the elevation was going to affect him either, because I talked to him about it, he spent a ton of time sleeping because the elevation was really hitting him. And I didn't feel good there, so I tried out my neck brace. That neck brace, I've shown it on the videos before, I don't have it out right now. It didn't work as well as I wanted it to. It didn't work as well as I was hoping it would. And I was kind of messed up. My neck was a bit messed up by the time I got there. When I wrestled alligators, I was not feeling my best, even for currently. So that was interesting. And on my way home, on the flight home, I was different. I didn't use the neck brace. I braced up my lower back, my lumbar spine, with my jacket, and then arched my neck into a lordotic curve like this, and stayed like that on both the flights all the way home, from Denver to Chicago, Chicago to Muskegon, and that seemed to work a lot better. But I did have, just health-wise, spine-wise, I had a harder time flying than I did wrestling the alligators, which is kind of surprising. Seems pretty weird, because you can watch those alligator wrestling videos, and it's pretty physically intense. And well, talking about alligator wrestling, it was awesome. My trainer was Connor. He's been working there for 5 years. He's been training people in alligator wrestling for 3 years, but he grew up there as like a little kid. He's still pretty young. And there's pictures of him there as a little kid. They have fingers in jars that people have lost. The one is the end. A lot of the finger bones are just like the bones are left in a jar. But the one thumb, the top part of the thumb, it was just shredded off, and it's all still fleshy. It's from like 2016. It's all still fleshy and has the nail on and everything. So that's pretty crazy. And he's saying a crazy liability for him, just like skydiving and stuff. It's like, in case of major injury or death, you accept responsibility for being stupid enough to do this. Sign here. And, so he signed that. And the guys were interesting. I liked them a lot, but I think some people would say they were maybe a bit discouraging, but I think that makes sense. You don't necessarily want to get in there and start wrestling alligators with someone who's super fearful, because they're going to be hesitant. That's not going to work out. Someone who's super brash and does stupid things, because that's not going to work out. Someone that's just stupid, because that's not going to work out. So they're kind of verbally testing you a little bit, and you can quit anytime you want. So they start you out with small ones. And, they're pretty small. You can see in the videos and the other videos. And you get in this little pool, and you just wade around in there, dragging your feet. And because you don't want to step on top of them, so you drag your feet so you hit stuff. The little pool you could see, and it was clear. But when you get into the other pools, they're really murky. So you can't see if you're going to be stepping on an alligator, which is pretty crazy. And you just reach in one hand and bam, pin it, grab its neck, and then grab its tail, and boop. And I did 2 of those with my right hand, and then I did 1 with my left hand just to see if I could do it left-handed, and went fine. So then you move up to the bigger stage, and they're a different area, and they're a little bit bigger. And then, so Connor, at the different sizes, have different techniques they use to catch them, which is pretty interesting. And he would tell me how to do it, and then he would demo how to do it, and then I would do it. And it was fun. It went well the whole way. And you're actually doing some work. You're doing medical checks, which is kind of cool. And they had some serious stuff they actually had to get done. So several of them that I caught, he found cuts on, right? I would be holding them and kind of, right, leaning back and holding up the head like they do, which is because they're kind of telling me they do bilateral movement very well. And when you pull them up, not only do you get their front legs off the ground, but they're not used to moving in that plane, so it disorients them, so they'll fight less. So that's why you pull them up like that, because it works good for controlling them, and it really does. And then, so several of them had cuts. He put antibiotic ointment on them, like Neosporin for alligators, essentially, just not name brand stuff, and oil based, so it stays on better in the water. And then there was one that we caught that was pretty good size. He wasn't in the biggest grouping. There's one group of 60 that are 8 to 10 feet, and then there's a couple that are bigger than that are kept by themselves, because the most dangerous thing to alligators is alligators. Most of them die from being eaten by other alligators and getting in fights and being seriously injured. And the one, so I caught a couple at this level, and the one is Cujo. And Cujo has bitten off people's fingers before, right? Cujo, like the horror dog from Stephen King's writing. And he was feisty. He was like puffed up. He was facing away from me. He was kind of puffed up and hissing. And the hissing is pretty freaky, especially when you get to the real big ones. And there's a bunch of them like, and it's a very primal, right? It's like, I don't know how old it is, like 100, 200 million years old or something. And it really, you're like, whoo. And so at this size, what you do is you grab their tail. You grab the end of the tail and drag them out of the water and then jump on their neck. And so I do this with Cujo, and he said, Connor told me, he said he's going to try to spin and bite you as soon as you grab him. And he did. He spun this way, and so, I turn away from him, and he spun the other way, and turn away, and spun. And he got relatively close in there. He's got a good video of that. And then I pin him, I get him down and stuff, and he was quite feisty. And it turns out one of his legs was quite infected. So, from being bitten by another alligator, getting a fight in there. And Connor had to, it wasn't like it was past putting ointment on. So he had to go get a syringe with antibiotics in it. Well, he didn't bring the syringes. So he helped me get my hands over his eyes, and then my one hand on his neck, but my hand's nowhere near big enough to go around his neck, really, And so I'm sitting on him and squeezing my legs, and I got his hands, and he's like, you don't want to move your thumb too far apart, because it's over his eyes. If you get out here, you might be able to catch that thumb, or if this pinky starts veering out here, you might be able to catch that pinky. So you got keep the fingers nice and tight, and stay on them. I'll be right back. So he jumps the gate and runs away, and it seemed like a super long time. It seemed like 10, 15 minutes. Realistically, it was probably a few minutes. Yeah, he might have been gone 5 minutes. I think he maybe had to search for the syringes. And what was hilarious, though, this place is pretty big. They have 300 alligators. They started as a fishery in the 1980s. Colorado Gator Farm is what it's called. And then, for some reason, they had so many fish, they were like, let's get a couple alligators. And so 150 of the alligators they have currently, I believe they've bred, and 150 are rescues. And then they have a bunch of boa constrictors and snakes. They have some parrots. They have some iguanas. They have rattlesnakes, which were all rescues as well. And then they have a ton of big old tortoises, and they were just wandering around, which was pretty funny. And they're all rescues as well. And then they have a bunch of emus from some emu farm that shut down, and they ended up with a bunch of those, which apparently the emus, to a large extent, are not bothered, especially the big emus are not bothered being with alligators. Most of the emus they have separate, but they had one, the adult male emu was beating up and killing some of the small emus, so they moved him to a different area, obviously. And there's one big alligator in there, and the two leave each other alone, which is interesting. It's pretty crazy. In this place, they drilled down 2,000 feet into the ground and pump up water, which comes up at 87 degrees. But then as it flows further out, it gets cooler and out on the edges. Where we were, especially because you're at 8,000 feet, it was already frosty, and there was a little bit of snow and everything. It was getting down into the 20s and whatnot. So a little cooler than we are here in Michigan currently, but soon we'll be there. And we get a lot more snow than where I was in Colorado there. Anyways, so Cujo, so Connor runs and does that, and this couple is coming around as, it's just a sightseeing thing, there's a tourist attraction. And they thought I was an employee, so I'm focused. I mean, I'm dead focused on this thing because I'm looking for any little twitch, like I'm really paying attention. And came up behind me, and they thought I was an employee, and they were like checking out what I was doing. They're like, "Oh, look, he's holding this one down," Yeah, that was kind of funny. So I mean, I guess I did look like an employee. I was in the gated area, alone, holding down a decent sized alligator, all muddy with rolled up jeans and whatnot. Which at the end, I was soaked, and the one guy was saying, Connor was saying, you can't get that smell out. Like the smell gets stuck in the clothes, and so I just threw all my clothes away. Even my belt was kind of ratty, an old leather belt, so I just threw that away too. And my pants are a little too big. The jeans I wore home, I mean, all my pants are kind of like just a little too big because my weight's fluctuated so much over the last couple of years with all the hormone stuff, with the brainstem stuff being all messed up. And so I had to like hold my pants up as I'm going through the airport coming home, which was kind of funny. But Connor did make it back and injected him with the antibiotics and let him go. So that was cool. There was another one that was smaller than Cujo, and it was not eating correctly. It was not eating enough, so it was getting too skinny. And it was already kept in a little separate area with just a few other alligators about its size. And so I went in there, I caught that one, and then Connor taped up its mouth as I was holding it, and then you just curl it, and I handed it over the fence to him, and then we walked across this pond full of a bunch of other alligators where Cujo was and a bunch of other ones, and then I jumped a fence, and then he handed it over to me. We took it over into this other building near where all the fish are kept. And that building is kind of like a greenhouse, and that's where the 87-degree water is coming in too. And the alligators will eat more when they're warm, so they'll be able to fatten him up essentially over the winter with other ones they're not eating, but he will be eating. And then there was one other one. Jared is the guy that at least helps, maybe runs the fishery part. And there was a big alligator, 9-10 feet, it was big, that was way out, and where the water is getting cold, and so it was starting to ice over. And apparently the alligators are so resilient, they can freeze right into the ice. Like they could freeze right into the ice. Their heartbeat will drop down to like a beat per minute. And as long as their brain doesn't freeze, when it thaws, they will be able to walk away. Which is just crazy, which makes sense why they've been able to survive for hundreds of millions of years and through all the dinosaurs dying and everything. They're hardy creatures, so crazy. But they didn't want to let her freeze in over the winter, so it was one of our jobs for the day to go retrieve her and move her to one of the spots where it's warmer. And Jared had big old like fishing trousers on, so waders. So he got in the ice itself, and then Connor and I helped from the shore, helped drag it out. It wasn't moving very much, it's cold, so that one wasn't doing too much moving. Drug it out, and then we had to haul it. I mean, we just had to carry it, the three of us. And this thing, I don't know how much it actually weighed, but it, at least 400 pounds. I'm guessing 500 pounds. It was big because I was picking up the tail, and I think the tail alone was probably 200 pounds. That sucker was heavy, and we had to haul it way too far. We had to take a couple of breaks. That was quite the work out there. And then we went into the big pen where they're all, the one where we put this one in actually, they're all 8 to 10 footers. And so you catch those a little different, the little ones you just grab, and then those other ones you drag out by the tail and then jump on their neck. And then the bigger ones, what you have to do is you can try to lasso them, and I tried doing that, where you get the rope into a loop and you loop them around the neck and you lasso them, and then you drag them up on shore. But I couldn't get that to work. They're too smart. They just go around the lasso. So the other method is the Superman method, where you jump on their neck, essentially like the other ones, but they're too strong. You can't pull them by the tail, right? If you grab the tail, they will pull you. So you can't use that method. And I tried lassoing for a while. We go into this pond, and I mean, it's a decent-sized pond, but it's not huge. There are 60 alligators, all between 8 and 10 feet, so big alligators, These are like the man-eater size alligators. And we could see, at first, we could see 10, which means there's 50 of them in the water where we can't see them, which is crazy. And at one point, we had, because we're walking on the shore trying to get it, lasso them and stuff like this, we could see none of them, right? So there's 60 alligators in this mucky pond that you can't see through. You can't even see your own legs, you know. That's why you scrape your feet along, and so that you don't step on top of an alligator. Hopefully you kick it in the side, hopefully not in the mouth, right? Hopefully in the tail. And so it's kind of crazy. How many alligators are in there that you just can't see at all, and then you just wade into it. And at its deepest point, it was like up to the waist. I tried not to go in that deep because the water there was still a little chilly. But Connor got one. You jump on it. You jump on the neck, the Superman method. Like as it's running away from you, just boom, jump on the neck and try to hold it like you do with the other ones. And it's just bigger, stronger. And then you have a rope in your hand, and you feed it around the neck and loop it through, and shoot, and then you just pull it to shore, kind of like walking a dog. And you know, I did one of the 9-footers, and it kind of was like walking a dog. It was odd. You couldn't pull it through the water decently well, because mine was trying to get to a cave. It was trying to dive into a little cave hole, so it was trying to get away. And it was weird. When they get their feet pushed into the dirt is when they're really hard to move. That's when it requires 2 people to pull them up and get them fully onto shore. And so I tried the lasso thing for a while and wasn't getting anywhere with it. And so I was like, all right, you know, I'm gonna have to jump on one. And walked around for a while trying to find one that would be good to jump on in a good position. And there was some crazy stuff. We found some teeth. I should have had the teeth ready too. I don't have the brace. I don't have the teeth next to me. Oh yes, there I do. I do have the teeth. So there are, and I have a picture of those elsewhere too. But these, I was looking for alligators. There's 4 teeth in here, and Connor kept finding teeth just on the bottom of the pond. You'd see a little white speck like reflect up when we were near the edge, so you could see down a little bit. And that was fairly early, so it wasn't mucked up as much. And so he grabbed a few teeth for me, which is cool. And then I did get, if you catch one of the 9-footers, you get a certificate of insanity, which is pretty cool. And then comes with one picture of me sitting on there. You know, there's a bunch of other pictures and videos in other places, but one picture in here. So that thing's pretty cool. And well, I found one that instead of facing into the deep water was facing towards the shore, but in the water. And I was like, all right, this one I think will be easier to jump on just because of the way it's facing. It'll have to turn if it wants to go towards the deeper water instead of just running forward. And so I jumped on that one, and that worked out pretty good. It didn't put up too much of a fight right away. You know, some of them are real fighters and some of them are less. You know, they still don't like being handled so much. And looped it around, and I think that's where I got a little cut on my knuckles from the dirt. And then on the inside of my right foot, I have a couple of scrapes and might have a bruise developing because I think I caught a tail from one of them in there when I was letting him go. That might have been Cujo's. His tail was all over the place. And so this one, I pull it up to shore, and then Connor helped me get it up to shore, and we did all the posing and stuff. And with the big ones, you actually put your fingers in their mouth, right, way back, where there's like a little fold with no teeth, and it is a perfect spot to grip. And so if they slam their jaw shut, you'll get a lot of pressure, but you won't lose fingers. So it's kind of interesting putting your fingers in that part of the mouth. But it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And then we were just, you're out in the cold weather, and getting out of the water was horrible because it's, freezing. And then you're trying to walk on like hard packed dirt, gravel, and broken cement and stuff, and your feet are evaporating water, and they just ended up feeling like clubs. So we went into the little greenhouse fishery part, and where the water is warmer, and jumped in with the fish just to soak our feet and warm them up a little bit. And then all the little fish come up and they start eating like the dead skin off your feet and whatnot, which is kind of a funny feeling. So I've done that before, but I can't remember where. So that was cool. The whole thing was a blast. It was pretty fun. And if you think about this, right? So I've got this and the Deathly Hallows. So it's like a dark wizard fighting dragons. All right, dark wizard catching dragons. That's that's what it's like. And then the trip home, I did that a little differently, and that seemed to work out better. But it still makes me nervous about doing a long flight, because I was really hoping I'd be able to do some Europe stuff before my health gets bad, or or I die or whatever. And I would like to just do an Iceland-Ireland trip, even, just to cut it down to make it logistically easier and cheaper and everything. Iceland-Ireland trip would be cool because they still have a lot of belief in like ferries and stuff, so I would incorporate like ferry sightseeing in, or ferry hunting, or, I wouldn't really be hunting them. It's more like bird watching, but ferry watching, I guess. And so I think that would be fun, but the flight makes me quite nervous. I'm thinking a motorcycle might work out good, though, like a long motorcycle trip. I have to play with it because I don't know about the vibration. Might really throw off my spine, so I'll have to check, We'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. And on the flight home, so I listened to audiobooks the whole way, mostly the Kingkiller Chronicle and Harry Potter. And, man, the plotting of Harry Potter just amazes me, and just the writing of the Kingkiller Chronicle just amazes me. It just blows my mind. And I finished off that story, the horror zombie story about the kids. Don't read it if you don't like horror stuff, but if you like horror stuff, read it, because I'm getting really good reviews on it. On Steam it, I made $21 because 377 people liked the post. And but it's 1,053 words right now, so I have to edit it down a little bit. And I made my bio too, and I posted that on the blog as well, jeffreyalexandermartin.com. So some interesting stuff on there to check out. But that project's going well, going cool. I've seen the cover that Oleg has, and that looks cool. And then so from Chicago to Muskegon, which is, they're nice flights because Muskegon's so small, it's so easy to just manage while you're there, and then it's such a short trip flight from Muskegon to Chicago. It's 29 minutes going there. I think it's 24 minutes going back, actually in the air. And you spend just as much time taxiing on the ground as actually flying in the air, which is pretty funny. And the guy next to me, so at the end, I take off my headphones and everything as we're taxiing, and I was like, what were you traveling for? And he lives in Norton Shores. His name was Ryan, and on Sherman there's a kayak place that he does something for. I didn't ask the specifics, but he's traveling for business, and it seems like he's traveling to Charlotte. And then he asked me what I was doing, and I said alligator wrestling, and he looked away and he looked at me. I said, say that again? Like, alligator wrestling. He's like, I thought that's what you said. And he just looked flabbergasted. And I was like, yeah, man, it was really cool. It's, the most intense place in the United States is in Colorado, of all places, which is weird, pretty crazy. And then I pulled out this thing, my certificate of insanity, right, with the picture and everything. And he's like, oh, you weren't joking. I think he thought I was lying at first. And then the guy in the seat behind us stood up, and he's looking over my shoulder at it, and the woman next to me is leaning across the aisle and looking at it. And it's a good conversation starter. That's for sure. So that was fun. He was a cool guy. Then I had to get back, and that night Casey picked me up, and then we talked for a while afterwards, and then it was late. I don't know, 10, 11, somewhere in there. I ended up getting to bed. I had to wake up at 4:42 because I had to work at 5. I had to teach at 5 this morning. So that was crazy. And then I tried to get a shower, and then try to catch Tim with fixing the car. And last night, I also had to sign up for hours for teaching because I didn't teach while I was on the trip. I could have, because as long as I have high-speed Wi-Fi and a laptop, I could. But I didn't want to throw that into, I didn't know how my health would be, and I didn't know how hard flying and alligator wrestling would be on me, and just logistically I didn't want to throw that in there. So I slept as much as I could while I was staying at the cabin, instead of setting alarm clocks if I didn't have to, which I didn't have to. I just slept as long as I could. And 2-hour time difference, which I didn't even realize. I was thinking it was 1 hour, but I guess Colorado is that far over. And So it was, well, I just tried to, I tried to rest a decent amount, but then I had to get home and sign up for those hours, and then I have a ton of emails and, stuff to do. There's always life stuff going on. And one of the emails I got back was the guy that runs Hey Radio. I can't remember his name offhand for some reason. Can't remember it. I have it in the email. It might be Jim. And Bill. Yeah. I'm going to have to look now. But I sent him a message saying, which 88.9 Hey Radio is a Christian rock station on North Muskegon, which is pretty cool. They're a volunteer organization and whatnot. I knew that. I've been listening to him for a few years. And Dave from Mr. B's Pancake House, who I used to talk to when I worked at Baker a number of years ago, I would take my lunch break sometimes and go to Mr. B's, and it seemed like Dave was always there at the same time, and we'd talk. And then we ended up designing, experimenting with omelets. And we came up with a farmer's omelet with a couple of substitutes and stuff changed with a certain gravy on top and everything. I tried getting Dave to put it on the menu as Jeff's special or Jeff's omelet or something like that, and he wouldn't do it. I think I got him close. I think if I would have kept going in there for another year and asking him if he'd put it on, I probably could have got on the menu, but my schedule changed, and so I wasn't able to go there every day for lunch. Would have been so cool to have my own menu item, Jeff's omelet. But anyways, I can't even remember exactly what it was like now. I probably could if I worked on figuring it out. But he helped sponsor. He advertised a little bit on Hey Radio, so I talked to him about it before. I don't think I heard about it from him, but we had talked about it. Anyways, recently, a few weeks ago, I think I emailed the guy. We've been emailing a little bit back and forth. They've been busy. They're putting in an emergency generator, and I asked, if there's something little I could do from home and help out, and he checked out my resume and stuff, and he said he thinks it would be good if they were able to put out a post, like an article once a week on the background to a song or the meaning of a song or the background of an artist or some musicians or something like that. And it might be a good fit for writing up an article a week. So I might be doing that in the near future, which would be pretty cool. I also, this is a crazy one, I got approved to try to beat a Guinness World Record, to set a Guinness World Record. But it's a weird one. It's for the fastest email typed on a tablet. And it's quite the operation. You need 2 official timers, which they want them to be like JDs or CPAs or have some sort of government license or something. And then you need 2 official witnesses. And then you need to record. The entire event should have probably 2 recorders. So you need 2 timers, and these can't be the same people. You need 2 timers and 2 witnesses, and then probably 2 people recording. So you need 6 other people to logistically just do this thing. And they're supposed to be like third-party official witnesses. So that's pretty interesting. I have a bunch of other plans in the works, as I always do, so I'll keep working on those. One other thing that I worked on this trip, and a little bit before, but a decent amount on this trip actually, or something different happened on this trip, I guess, is active imagination from Carl Jung, the psychologist. And I've been trying to put my mind back together and even make it better than it was before, because it needs to be, because it wasn't, in the place where I wanted to be before. And it works really well for open people, which my openness scores, which is a psychological trait, are in the 97th percentile, so top 3%, they're a ways up there. And which is, right, so it means I'm really open to stuff. It kind of defines itself pretty well. And what you essentially do is you focus on like a fantasy element or something that came up in a dream or something, and it'll start changing, it'll start moving, it'll start playing out into a story, a scene, this type of thing. And then you try to insert yourself into it, and you try to act within this fantasy realm or whatever. It's fairly intense. It's like lucid dreaming, if people have ever done that, where you dream but then you act within the dream because you're aware that you're dreaming. And I've never been able to do that. I did record over like 2 months 22 of my dreams, and then which I've never done before, and I made a blog post on it. I haven't been doing it since, and I didn't interpret them at all. I just recorded them and put them up. But there's some things that have come up as a landscape of pyramids, right? And they're like pyramids of social hierarchies, which is very interesting. And I have not really worked that one out. I mean, these are pretty intense to work out, actually. Another one is a labyrinth, right? Like the hedgerows labyrinth, old school labyrinth, and I haven't worked that one out at all. But another one came up on this trip, which was jewels, right? So jewels were like being generated in my hands, which is pretty crazy. But then, I mean, my hands were filling up pretty quick, and then they're spilling out. But whenever the jewels would hit the ground, they would like disappear. They would just kind of evaporate into the ground. So I'm generating jewels, but I'm losing them all the time, right? So I'm not retaining the jewels. And I was trying to like figure out how to solve this problem, you know. So I was trying to like put them in a bucket or a box or something like that. But then those would just fill up, and I couldn't. I mean, my hands were generating jewels, so I couldn't do anything to manipulate other boxes and stuff like this. And actually, I solved that one. It was super. I mean, super crazy, interesting experience. Just as crazy as alligator wrestling, actually. And how I solved it in the dream is I started giving the jewels away, like dumping them to other people. Well, and then if you're giving jewels away, more people just come, right? So then more people just come, and I could just give them more jewels. So my logistical coordination was kind of solved for me, and it felt like such a breakthrough. It was very interesting. It was pretty crazy. So I like it a lot, which is interesting because I'm playing with Jungian stuff, and I've actually been reading a ton of Viktor Frankl recently, like Psychotherapy and Existentialism, which is excellent, and Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, which is super excellent. I've been combining that with like the human ethology stuff, like Love and Hate by, I have no idea, right? It's like Irenaeus Ebesfeld, something like that. And that's super good stuff too. And then, of course, all the fiction stuff I'm reading, which I'm reading Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. And that is just genius. The show is great too. I saw the show and checked out the book, and I've never read anything by Terry Pratchett. I mean, I know who it is. It's excellent. Really good stuff. All right. Anyways, you know, there's more stuff. Life is crazy and full and busy, and over the last few days, a lot of stuff has happened. But I think that's it for now. I don't know if anyone will watch this long into the video anyways. But until next time, this is Jeff, signing off.